It's okay. Hi, guys. Welcome to our home this Wednesday evening. Thanks for being here with us. Um, you know, uh, it's always fun to do things like this, a little bit different than normal. And so we're actually going to be recording this a little bit ahead of time, but we'll release it as if it's live. That's why it's sunny right now, even though you'll probably be watching this in the evening.
Probably so.
Anyway, but thanks for being here at North Crossings Church, home edition for our Wednesday night live. We are glad that you're here and glad that you're a part of what's going on in our community and around us right now. As we get ready to kind of open with prayer, just a few things that we wanted to kind of bring up that we're going to be making sure is part of our time of prayer, some concerns that are going on. Last Sunday, as many of you were watching the service on TV, you might have even heard in the background on the video that there was an alarm that went off for a weather pattern problem that was going on. And what that ended up being, by the time it was all said and done, were 3 tornadoes touching down here in Monroe and Sterlington. And so we want to be praying for that. Even this morning, Amy and I got out. We went and helped a friend of ours who had some pretty significant damage to their property and lost an animal. And
thankfully, there was no loss of life.
True, yes.
But about 300 families were displaced. And for those of you that are local, of course, you know these things. But pretty devastating for a number of people in our community. And again, we had the opportunity to help a friend this morning, which was really nice. But lots of people that were affected by those tornadoes that we need to be praying for.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is happening in the middle of a, worldwide pandemic. And so how do you show up and help someone? And we did it with masks on and gloves on the whole time we were there. The work gloves fit just fine. We didn't need the rubber gloves, but we were using work gloves, and we were helping there pick up debris and different stuff. And so we want to be praying for those that are affected. We want to be praying for those helpers, especially in the midst of the COVID stuff that is going on. With the COVID, not only those that are sick, but praying and thinking about those that are unemployed and maybe struggling financially, and then praying for those that are employed and their job calls them to go out into the community every day. We want to be praying for those folks as well. But one of the things that tends to pop up with this right now with this stay-at-home order is there's just lots of loneliness, some depression that's going around. We want to make sure that we're praying for that as well, and for all those who are just living in fear right now. We want that to be prayed for as well. One of the families, Tracy Adcock, texted me earlier this week, and the Grayson family, and we were helping the Murphy family. So just 2 families that you can put names to represent all of those that were affected in the tornado. Got information from my brother about someone that we knew. The Gentry family lost a 41-year-old daughter this week to COVID, and so we want to be praying for them. The Geist family, some friends of Brother Ray's, and I believe several other people in the congregation know them, but John and his daughter Alexis, both with health problems concerned with that. And Alexis is 8 months pregnant and tested positive for COVID. She's a resident at LSUS. Miss Ezzie Nethery, Tim's mom, still recovering, still at home, and Tim and Becky, who are quarantined right now because of his mom's diagnosis with COVID. And Michaela, KK, asked for prayer for Vicki Freeman, who is connected to her through school, to be praying for her with an aneurysm and second surgery that had to happen for infection. And so those are the things that we are praying for. We would love to know what you're praying for too. Yes, ma'am.
Also, Linda Doolittle, who is Chrissy's mother, has had to have yet another procedure. She's still awaiting a surgery, but she's had a collapsed lung. She has been in critical care. Yeah. And of course, Chrissy can't go see her. Not only is she in another city, I think she's in Lafayette, but not only is she in another city, but of course with COVID-19, she wouldn't be allowed in the hospital anyways. Yeah. And so prayers for Chrissy during this time, and prayers for her mother, Linda, while she is so gravely ill right now.
Thanks. So if you have more prayer requests that you'd love to text into the church, email to the church, text me directly, uh, please don't hesitate to send that out. We're sending out prayer requests on a fairly regular basis because we're not able to be in front of each other. So please add those to your list. Amy, would you mind opening us in prayer?
Sure. Heavenly Father, thank you for your presence with us. Father, we know that you have told us that when where two or three gather, you are there. Well, while there are two of us here, we know that so many more are gathering with us together online, and we know that your presence is with us, even while we worship from our homes, even while we come to this time of Bible study. Separately, we are still together, and we are united in our devotion to you. And so, Father, for that I thank you. And I pray that you would make your presence known to everybody that we just mentioned, that we are lifting up in prayer. God, to the people who are have been diagnosed with COVID, or who have family members who have been diagnosed, or who have lost family members. God, I pray for each one of them, that they would feel your arms around them during this time. Same thing for those that are affected by the tornado, that you would help them to know that in spite of these terrible things that they're dealing with, that you are God, and that you are still present with them, and that you do still love them. God, and even for Linda Doolittle, who is in the hospital and fighting for her life right now as well. God, help each one of these people to know that you are present with them. Help us to know that today as well, Lord, as we sit down together, together apart, to study your word and to talk about what you might be calling us to do. Help us to feel your presence and to experience your voice, to hear from you tonight, Lord. Speak through Trey and I, and use our words, God. May you use our words to be a blessing to somebody. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, what I thought that we could talk about tonight, and the reason I invited Amy, is because we want to continue to think through. You know, Sunday was Easter, and so what was going on with the disciples during the time after Easter when they were preparing. And Amy and I have been talking about this week, just trying to figure out again, the constant question that we're asking is, what is God wanting us to do, right? You know, things like showing up today for the Murphys and being there with them. Those are all things that we can do, but the reality is we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so sometimes there's not anything you can do. Mm-hmm. And so that led me to kind of thinking through what is going on in the scriptures at this point in time. You know, just following the resurrection of Jesus, the disciples are still kind of weary. You know, they're not sure what's going on. They're not in definite understanding of everything that's happening. And Luke tends to record this differently. Every gospel actually treats this quite differently as to what's happening. They all record the resurrection just a little bit differently. Who was there? What was said? What happened? And a lot of people take that to kind of challenge, well, is the Bible really true if that's the case? And the reality is the fact that they're all so different, but they all still come to the same point, is actually what makes the Bible most believable. Because if you ever ask two witnesses to a crime what they saw, they all see something different. And they do that because they experience it different. And so with that, you know, I'm going to read for you Luke chapter 24, verse 49. There's a whole lot more that's here, but I think for me, this was really the point that I think Jesus was wanting to make, and what he wanted the disciples to hear. So Luke chapter 24 covers all the way from Jesus is risen to the road of Emmaus, to Jesus appearing with his disciples and with a short rendition of the ascension of Jesus into heaven. And so the very end of Jesus appearing with the disciples, so he kind of shows up into the room, the upper room, the place that they are meeting, the place that they are sheltering, honestly, because they don't know what's going to happen next. Jesus just kind of appears in the Luke version, and he portrays them, not that Thomas asks about the hands and feet in this version, but he shows it to him to prove that he's alive, and he eats something to prove that he's not a ghost. So I think that's a funny thing for me. I always thought that was kind of odd, but it says that he told them that now they would be able to understand that all of the, how does he say it, that the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms were all written about him. And so it says that he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. And he told them in first, I'm bumping back to 45. Then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. He told them, this is what is written. The Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning in Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. And then there's 49, which is where he gives them direction. I am going to send you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high. And so I think that's where I wanted to kind of start with us today. Mm-hmm. Jesus kind of says, what I want you to do is I want you to chill. The world's in chaos right now, but as the people who understand who I am, chill, wait. Now, when we were talking about this the other day, you said that took you somewhere.
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting, that these people were told to wait. And we know now that the disciples waited about 10 days. If you go on in Acts and read where this story picks up, it talks about how the day of Pentecost, where they were all speaking in different languages and everybody understood them, that happened about 10 days after this passage that Trey just read occurred. And so these people didn't have terribly long to wait, but they had no idea about that on the outset.
Right.
They just knew they were supposed to stay in the city, and they had just been through a pretty huge, a pretty rough ride. The leader that they had been following had just been, crucified on a cross. The public had turned against all of them, and they were kind of hunkered down. I'm sure they were a little bit, an exile in their own space. They couldn't really, they probably couldn't really leave to some degree because they may have feared somewhat being arrested or being persecuted, I guess, themselves. I don't know. You wonder what went through their minds during that time, and I think that's really interesting and really, of course, something that we maybe can only halfway relate to right now when we're all being told to stay at home and we're all stuck in our own homes right now. Well, it's not for fear of other humans outside our walls. There can be sometimes some fear, I think, of this coronavirus and what could happen if we spend too much time outside our walls. So in some ways, perhaps there's some similarities there.
Yeah, and just kind of a point of clarification, because I'm sure people will ask.
No, that's fine. I probably said something wrong.
No, it's not that you said something wrong. It's that your extrapolation of the 10 days is based on other scriptures.
Right.
It's not here. This, in Luke, it kind of talks as if this happens like the day that Jesus raises from the dead. And in other scriptures, it does not. There's actually 49 days between Easter and Pentecost. Mm-hmm. And during this time, the church's role is to actually kind of engage it from the standpoint of we wait now. We've seen the miracle of Jesus rising. During this time, he goes through the ascension, but we're waiting on the Spirit for the power that's coming to us. And so I just didn't want somebody to go, well, I thought it was 49 days. Yes, it is. But the timeline gets really lost when you kind of take some of the Gospels and you line them up together. You don't really know exactly how long times are going at some of this. And so
maybe it was closer to 49 days. I was
we don't know.
way off with the
we don't
okay.
know.
No,
I mean, it just depends on which version you're reading and where you're at in there. So I just didn't want that to for somebody, because I make mistakes all the time, like all the time, and inevitably someone is sitting there with Google going, "Trey, you're wrong," and that's okay. I do that a lot on Wednesday nights. Yeah, she does that a lot to me. But I do that a lot on Wednesday nights because so often our conversation takes us to a place that I haven't prepared for.
Sure.
And so I speak from my best memory, which is not always the best memory.
Well, when I think about this time, and I'm going to kind of flip back and forth a little bit about what's going on in our own lives right now, I guess, and what's going on there, because when I thought about the disciples there, and having to just stay in the city, don't go anywhere. I'll let you know. You'll know when it's time to do something, that kind of thing. I think. Sorry, my hair is doing something weird. I think.
This is the problem when you can see yourself on TV while you're recording it. Anyway.
I think I feel like it's similar, I guess, in some ways to what we're doing right now, which is, staying home. We have to stay in. We have to stay in. We have to stay home. And we may want to go do something to help other people. And, especially with these tornadoes, we want to go do stuff to help these other people. And while, yes, we may be called to do that. I think Trey and I clearly today were called to go help our friends do some cleanup today. But for the most part, we want to go do something, and we feel like maybe there's something that we should be doing to make a difference. And sometimes the most important thing we can do to make a difference is to stay home. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. Sometimes that's really hard for us because we're so busy going and doing. And so what continues to go through my mind during this time are the words, be still and know that I am God. And I'm sure that most of you are familiar with those words. And it's a pretty, well-known scripture. But I didn't know where it came from or what the context was that it was in. And so I did a little bit of research on that today. And it actually comes out of Psalm 46. It's only 11 verses long. And I'm going to read the whole thing to you because I thought it was actually kind of interesting.
Know what version you're reading from?
I'm reading from the NIV. And it says this. It says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fail. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice, the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. And I think that's a really cool scripture.
So be still and know is in the midst of chaos.
Yeah. When you read this, these people are reminding themselves initially, God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble, that God is the place to go in the midst of chaos, when the mountains are falling into the sea and the waters are, roaring and foaming, that, it sounds like earthquakes. It sounds like natural disasters, like a tornado. It's about these things that are completely out of human control. It then talks about that he's the one that makes wars cease. We're not specifically at war today, but uh, he's the one that has the power to do those things. He's the one that has the power. He's the one that is still sovereign, even in the midst of this. Does that mean he's, making these things happen? I think there's a lot of, that's a whole new conversation,
Yeah.
Um, but even in spite of these things happening, he is still God. And what he tells us isn't, oh, take up your sword and go fight for me. He's not telling us go do this or this or this. He's saying in this, be still and know that I'm God. Even in the middle of the chaos, you need to stop. You need to pay attention. You need to recognize and acknowledge me. That's what he's saying. And sometimes I think we forget to do that in the busyness of our lives. And perhaps right now, in the middle of us feeling helpless, in the middle of us being required to stay at home, this is an opportunity for us to take notice of God, to be still, to spend some time with God, to spend some time in prayer, to spend some time in our Bibles reading, and to be acknowledging Him.
Yeah. Well, and as you say that reminds me of what Katie had posted the other day on Facebook that I was talking to you about earlier. Yeah, a friend of mine, and it was just kind of addressing a part of this, and she says, suddenly we silently see within ourselves and understand the value of the words solidarity, love, strength, empathy, and faith. In an instant, we realized that we are all in the same boat, rich or poor, that the supermarket shelves are empty and the hospitals are full. New cars and old cars, doesn't matter. They all stand in the garages simply because no one can get out. Empty streets, less pollution, clean air, the land also breathes. The humans return to their origins, realizing that with or without money, the important thing is to survive. Today, health is the main thing, even in spite of wanting to have our possessions. Our overthrown gods are money, sports, fame, and politics. What the coronavirus is teaching us is that our best protection is God, our best refuge is home, our best company is family, and our real time is today. And I think, when you talk about that, I think so many times I've been doing this. I've been doing this since we've been in lockdown. I've been encouraging everyone, hey, do this, call people, check on them, reach out to them, touch base with those that you love, touch base with those you've never met before, check on folks. But I've been focused on the do. Mm-hmm. What is God calling us to do in this moment? And I think what this passage and the Luke passage, and even just with this time between Easter and Pentecost reminds us is God isn't as considered with what we're doing as to who we are. Are we taking time to recognize, one of the things that Amy and I are trying to do right now is at least 3 to 4 nights a week, we're trying to do a family game night instead of sitting and watching a Netflix something. We're trying.
We've pretty much watched all of Netflix too. For those of you that have finished Netflix, we're pretty much there too.
It's we're wanting to harness this time.
Yeah. We recognize this is a unique time, and we don't want to look back on it and realize we squandered it. And so maybe this is an opportunity for us to spend some time with each other, with our families, and to do something more productive than each one of us going to our own spaces and staring at our Facebook pages and whatever the case might be. Yeah. So it's been good. I've enjoyed it, and I know we may look back. We grown-ups may look back at this time 10, 20 years from now and remember this as a time when we were stuck at home and when we were somewhat helpless, and when we were pulling our hair out, and when we were worried about finances, or we were worried about this or that, worried about getting sick. And our kids might look back and remember it as a time that they got to spend with their parents, and a time when we were really close and we got to do things together. And so that's my hope. We as parents have a role to play in that. We get to help shape what happens during this time.
Yeah.
The truth is, we get to shape what happens all the time in our kids' lives, but perhaps this is a time when we're more forced to think about that than others.
Yeah.
But I think your point about who God is calling us to be is really important. When we think about the disciples that were, stuck in Jerusalem for 10 or 49 days, I don't know what they did during that time. We don't have any good documentation that I know of that tells us what they did during that time, or how that time might have shaped them. But we have multiple places, in Scripture where we recognize that God does come to people when they are more still, when they're paying attention. I thought about Moses too. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought about Moses too. When he wanted to see God's glory, and God said, okay, I'll put you in this crag of this rock, and there was an earthquake, but God wasn't in the earthquake, and there was a horrible storm that came through, and God wasn't in the storm. All these displays of power that you might have thought he was in, and then there was a gentle wind, and he was in the whisper of that gentle wind. I'm probably getting that all wrong too. But
the point's right. So
that if Moses hadn't been paying attention and looking for him, he would have missed him altogether.
Yeah.
And that's the point there. And so I guess that's my question for myself right now, is what am I doing to pay attention to God? What am I doing to look for God? And I continue to come back to this quiet voice in my own head saying, be still, stop, feeling guilty, stop looking for other things to do, and spend time with me.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the hardest thing for any of us to do. We all feel like we need to be busy. It was interesting. I was talking with Tim. Hi, Tim and Becky. I was talking with Tim Nethery this week, and just asking him. He's now quarantined for 14 days, and I said, how are you doing? If you need to get, if you feel like you need to get out, you need to, drive around. What do you need to do? And he said, man, I think this is the best 14-day vacation I've ever had. He said, I know I can't go. I know I can't do. I know there's a lot of things around the house that I could be doing, but I also just enjoy spending time with my wife. And I love that. I love that he has the ability to step back from what it could feel like and take it as a blessing that he has. And I think that's something that we're all called to do. Now, I know that some of you are locked into a house with young kids that just their energy grows day after day after day, and sometimes that can feel really bad. But remember those times when you were so busy that you couldn't spend time with them, and take this as an opportunity to teach them something, to help them learn something, to spend some time talking about the value of your faith and God and who he is and what he means to you, and kind of imparting some of that on to your kids. But again, that's about the do. And I want to stay away from the do, because I think God, again, one of the things we said earlier was God really cares more about who we are than what we do.
Most of you that are pulling your hair out with those kids, you probably prayed for patience sometime recently, and so that's, remember, he's giving you a lesson.
Yeah, in one of our small groups the other night, somebody goes, "Don't you dare pray for me to have patience in this." And I was like, "Okay, no problem," because they just know that God gives them opportunities for patience. So,
opportunities to develop that.
Yeah.
You're developing a new emotional muscle, a new spiritual muscle in the
Yeah.
midst of that. And I joke about that, but there is some truth in that too. What is God teaching you when you're about to pull your hair out with your kids, and how could you, how could you identify some sort of a lesson that's in there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's not. I get it. Sometimes there's not a lesson, or at least it's completely lost on me too. But I do think it's important for us to recognize that God talks to us sometimes in the everyday, and
Yeah.
that's important.
And for the sanity of those parents who are pulling their hair out right now, understand that we beat our children with an inch of their life, or we threaten to if they.
I was going to say, we do not beat
We
them.
don't do that. We threatened to if they came in here and disrupted this time when we were recording this.
Boys.
That's really blown out of proportion. But our house is chaotic. If you had a chance to watch. If you had a chance to watch our Passover meal last week that we did as a family,
Trey had no idea that Aiden was going, I can't do it.
Yeah, he was miming into the camera several times. I had no idea he was doing that till I was editing it, and it was in high speed that I saw it, and I was like, I can't take that out. But we can all identify, we can all understand, and we can all wrap our minds around that this isn't the same for everyone, and it's difficult for everyone in their own ways. I loved the other day, when Brian and I were talking at church one Sunday morning, and I made a comment about, if you have friends that are extroverts, and if you don't know the term extrovert and introvert, an extrovert is someone who gets their energy, who gets their energy from being around other people and from engaging in conversation and enjoying life together. An introvert is someone who, it doesn't mean that they're not good at doing those things, but their energy comes from being alone. And so I made the comment to Brian. I said, "Hey, you need to check on your extroverted friends because they are not okay right now." And his response was, "Hey, us introverts ain't dealing with this very well either."
There are way too many people under this roof.
Yeah, and so we realize that whether you're at home by yourself, and that is a loneliness of its own, and we know that. I laugh because I'm thinking about Pastor Ray right now because. He loves his family. He loves Liam. But Liam for a month locked in the house and not able to go anywhere, I'm sure that's a really hard thing for he and Dana. Not because Liam's a handful. He's not. He's a good kid. But when you're used to being alone and all of a sudden, they're having to be parents again at their age. Not that they're old. Anyway, you had something, Amy. Sorry, I kept cutting you off.
We were talking about, kind of just, identifying what God, becoming who God wants us to become, even in the middle of all of this. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to stop and pay attention, to be still and know and to pay attention. And one of my favorite poems is by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And she says, Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees it takes off his shoes. The rest sit around and pluck blackberries. And I think that's really great because I've been the blackberry picker, and I've been the one that has taken off my shoes. And I want more often to be the one that recognizes when I'm standing on holy ground. And of course, that's largely a reference back to Moses and the burning bush. But I want to be the one that takes off my shoes and recognizes when I'm standing on holy ground, when I'm looking at a sunrise, or when I'm watching my boys get along at home and do something together. Or, when I'm having an opportunity to help a friend, today, like we did. I want to see those times when earth is crammed with heaven, and every once in a while we get a glimpse of it. And I want this to be a time when maybe I see it better than I have before. And maybe that's something that God is teaching me. Maybe that's something he's teaching you too. I don't know. Yeah. But that's one of my, I guess, prayers for you is that you would be able to recognize when you're standing on holy ground too. And recognize this perhaps as an opportunity to enter into God's presence in a new way.
Yeah. And I'll be really careful how people take this statement, because I don't intend it to go one way. But how many times have we prayed for lower gas prices, for less smog, for more time with our families, for less time to be focused on our work and to not be so busy. And now all of those things are here. And are we going to take time and actually appreciate them? Are we going to take time and um, actually look at them for what they are? I'm not saying that God caused this to give us that, but I'm saying that whatever is going on, God is always asking us to approach it as if we're approaching Him. You know, when Paul talks about, if you work unto the Lord. If you follow as if God is leading you. You know, these statements throughout, and I think for us, we need to be continuously looking at what's around us. You know, and I look at families in our church, and I know what workaholism is. I've been there. I've done that a lot, and I know what it is to be bored too. And what I'm trying really hard to do is, while I'm here at the house, I know that I get upset. I don't know if you've ever seen me do this or not, but I get upset when things don't go my way. Not because I'm a spoiled brat, at least I don't think so, but because I often spend a lot of time preparing for something to go one way, and when it doesn't, it upsets the apple cart. And so, you know, a lot of this stuff that's going on has been very frustrating to me. And when I'm here at home, because things aren't going the way that I envisioned it, that frustration can come out. And I'm trying really hard to not do that to my family. I'm trying to appreciate the fact that my office is set up right here in my dining room. You're sitting in my dining room right now, as you were last week for the Passover meal, but this is my desk. This is my office right now. And when the boys are playing on their video game stuff, I can hear every bit of it. I do sit in here with my earphones in, my earbuds in, often working on this stuff. But I think that's, not only is that the challenge for me, but I think out of this, I think it's the challenge for all of us. I think that over these next few weeks, however much longer we have, you know, sheltering at home, being in place, I think our challenge is, okay, God, what do you want me to see? What do you want me to learn? Not what are we going to do when we get out of here, but who are we going to be when we get out of here? How can we be your children? You know, what does that look like? And I think if we spend our focus, if we spend our time asking that question of who we will be when we get out of here, that leads us to planning. You know, it's less about Facebook and YouTube and more about spending time together and spending time with God. I think what we're going to be doing over the next several weeks is we're going to be talking more about prayer and what that is, but we're also going to begin to look at some of the other spiritual disciplines. What is it that we can be doing while we're here at home, while the world is slowed down? What can we do to deepen our walk with Him, and out of that, hopefully make a bigger impact for Him, because we are living out what He called us to be.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, guys, thank you for being with us today. I hope that you engaged in this new format with the two of us here. We worked really hard. One of our small groups that we're in watches a video of a husband and wife leading stuff, and they just always kind of look at each other.
Well, I have to say, I worked hard at getting us set up so that we were actually in a triangle, and it didn't work.
No.
Trey still turned his shoulders.
Yeah.
Anyway. Hope I didn't say.
Yeah. So anyway, our small group will be laughing at that. Everyone else is like, what the heck are you talking about? Anyway, I hope that this form of dialogue is effective for you. One of the things we're working on right now is I know that a lot of you who are part of our congregation are missing seeing some of the other people. I hope you really enjoyed the Smiles project of getting that. That is on both our YouTube and Facebook page, apart from the sermon, and so you can go there and you can see that, you can share that as well. But I'm working to try to get some of our leaders who are often up front. You often see their face and hear their voice. We're going to try to begin working them into some of the Sunday morning stuff, which means I'll have to do a little editing ahead of time, and it may not be live every week, but we're trying to put a lot of effort into that so that what we bring brings some familiarity to the church and what it is. And I know that you guys just miss seeing each other, and so. I may, instead of the Sunday morning gratitudes, I may be reaching out to some of you and asking you just to give a hello video to somebody, and let us share that on a Sunday morning so that we can see each other and not forget what each other looks like and sounds like. But guys, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Amy, thank you for being a part of the conversation. And
You're welcome.
and guys, we love you and we're praying for you, and may God bless you in this time, and may you come out of this quarantine closer to God and closer to his people and understanding who he wants you to be.
Yes.
Any final words?
I think you said it.
All right.
Be still. Know that he is God, and listen to his voice.
Cool. God bless. Stay safe. Love you all.